Hey y'all, happy Tuesday. Hopefully everyone is doing well. Hey to everyone coming over on Instagram. And if you are new here, make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button below. Also, I have a new style guide for women. If you want to learn how to conceal carry every single day and feel really confident about it, you know, keep your sense of fashion and all of those type of good things, then I have broken it down for you. I mean, and made it just smooth selling. So if you are interested in getting that concealed carry guide, go over to RhondaMary.com where you can purchase that. All right, y'all. So we're gonna go ahead and jump in tonight's topic. Because a video has recently resurfaced with Bill Gates mentioning, Trump. And I think it's just interesting how this video has resurfaced. I think the same week, maybe days apart from Biden basically coming out and saying, COVID is over. And I mean, which we kind of already knew and have been going on with our own lives and all these other things. But we're going to talk about why not only is this not the end, in a lot of ways, it's really honestly just beginning. And so, first, let's go ahead and take a look at what Biden recently said while he was on. I think this was this 60 Minutes.
Mr. President, first Detroit auto show in 3 years.
Yeah,
Is the pandemic over?
the pandemic is over. We still have a problem with COVID. We're still doing a lot of work on it. But the pandemic is over. If you notice, no one's wearing masks. Everybody seems to be in pretty good shape. And so I think it's changing, and I think this is a perfect example of it.
So he's basically said, something that a lot of us had already faced, like whatever this thing is, in a lot of ways, we're going to have to deal with this, accept it, and as a part of somewhat like a normal reality, just like you would with your seasonal flu. So I guess this is, I honestly think, in some ways, to help the economy get back on track, right? Because now people feel a little bit more confident that the country is getting back on track and things like this. You also have the fact that we are going into midterms. So for a lot of people, if you get on national TV and be like, hey, COVID is over, then to a lot of people, that's going to signal, oh, Biden came in and he saved us from COVID. We got the vaccines now. Everything is perfect. Everything is so great. Like, the country is really moving forward. But interestingly enough, at the same time, this video of Bill Gates resurfaces, and I want you guys to check this out.
Then the second time I saw him was the March after that, so March 2017 in the White House. In both of those two meetings, he asked me if vaccines weren't a bad thing because he was considering a commission to look into ill effects of vaccines. And somebody, his name was Robert Kennedy Jr., was advising him that vaccines were causing bad things. And I said, no, that's a dead end. That would be a bad thing. Don't do that.
So this is Bill Gates, the computer guy. And like, don't get me wrong, I am a firm believer that people can have different interests, people can evolve into, different areas and things like this. But when we have the same guy that is doing things like buying up farmland, all over the country, and some of these same people in his sphere, or these proponents of, climate change, but you're doing everything that you can to have access to farmlands and different things like this, being very invested in fake meat and all of these other kind of, I would say, agendas, right? Or narratives. Because when we see the media just constantly pushing something, I mean, you have to think something is there. And now you're being very much invested into vaccinations. He's had, or his family bloodline has had dealings in like abortion, right? And all these other things. And it's like, when you want to have a certain level of control, what do? Medicine, food, right? What other way to have a big, huge effect or some level of control over the population? Food, water, air. I don't know if you guys know this, but I've covered this. If you've not following me on YouTube, you should be. But I've already talked about this fact that Bill Gates, along with Harvard University, were doing experiments to spray things in our air to block the sun. So this is the type of person that we're dealing with, right? When you think of these things in a lot of ways, it almost gives you like a God complex. Like, why do you want to be involved in each area of the main areas of human activity? When we're really talking about production, how the world moves, ownership, you're going to talk about land, air, health and medicine and food. So that's the first, like, like your ears should start perking up when this person, Bill Gates, is being so heavily evolved and kind of touted as this mastermind of this, right? But in this video, he goes on to say that Donald Trump had a conversation with him and was like, look, I don't really know about this vaccine thing. I'm listening to my team. I'm listening to Robert Kennedy Jr., and they have concerns. Something may not be right. We may need to investigate this vaccination thing, how the vaccination companies or big pharma are moving about this, and how it's affecting the people. Bill Gates goes on to basically say, no, 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 don't do that. Which, when I see that, I see, no, 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 don't do that, because you about to start playing with my money. Okay? We know that it's common knowledge that billions have been made within the last 2 years from these vaccinations. So it's two things that I find frustrating from this is that you can show people, you can be like, right here, this is where Bill Gates said, no, 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 don't investigate us. You can show people right here is where Bill Gates said, if we do this, if we do X, Y, and Z, we can decrease the population by this much by this time. The number of people that are willing to ignore and make excuses for people that you haven't met a day in your life. You don't know these people no more than what they just tell you on the TV. This is just like, who is Bill Gates to you as a person? I mean, maybe you really like Microsoft products. That could be a thing, and respect this person for their business acumen and things like this. But the level of kind of like manipulation in these characters that the media creates is something, that needs to be explored. Also, I find it very concerning because it's this belief that they have to tell us, like, Like, none of this stuff that they're doing and that we're seeing is really being done in secrecy. Like, you can literally look at the videos coming out of the World Economic Forum. This is on record. I posted, I posted the videos on my Instagram. If you're not following me on Instagram, RhondaMary Vids, directly from I believe this was the World Economic Forum, and they're on a panel. These are some of your highest level, people all across the country and the world that are in these different organizations that deal with science, land, food, health, medicine, and all these other things. And this woman goes on the record and says that COVID was one of the, most biggest successful industries in recent history. Just like that. And so it's almost mind-blowing to me. It's confusing, it's nauseating, it's upsetting that you have so many people that will ignore what is right in front of them to make excuses for these people that have profit motive, because of the same people that will sit here and put these people on pedestals like they're gods will have the gall to turn around and talk about how much you hate capitalism. Make it make sense. There is an absolute obvious, it's beyond obvious profit motive here. We see this from the numbers. We see this from what they've been willing to say on record out of their own mouths. And so to try to ignore that to fit some narrative, or, and I'm not the type of person to believe that, oh, just because a person has money or X amount of money, it makes them evil or, want to do these bad things. I do think that you have a lot of people that once they've done so much and gained so much success, it's like, well, what do I do from here? I have this much power. Money does that. More money gives you more power. Then you could be a person like Bill Gates that has no actual solid education in virology, but you can go all across the world on media platforms and they uphold you as if you are some type of scientist. And so for people to try to not see the connection of the profit motive is just insane to me, right? And so this was a huge failure on Trump's part. This is going to forever be a stain on his presidency. Regardless of how you feel and what we remember today, the history books is going to be 100% the narrative that is going to be created, and partfully, rightfully so, is the fact that COVID happened mostly or started during the Trump administration. Trump is the father of Operation Warp Speed. And then you have a Bill Gates and a Fauci that he turned around and empowered practically at every turn. You can get in a news conference all you want and seem like you're making little gestures or body language or whatever. But when you're steadily emboldening these people on paper, your freaking gestures don't matter. It was the same thing with I talked about this with the Nancy Pelosi thing that time that, Trump was giving his speech and she gets in there and she's tearing up the paper. Girl, like, who cares about that? That's nothing more than symbolism. It doesn't have any effect on when you guys are getting behind those closed doors or in these meetings and y'all all signing off on these huge military budgets, but you'll get in front of the cameras and put on this showing. And a lot of people feel like, oh, well, he didn't force the vaccines, right? I think early on he did a very good job talking about therapeutics and how important therapeutics could be on the front end and how we should test those. I think he started off really, really strong with that message. And towards the end of that, when the vaccine started to come out, taking credit, taking credit for it, taking credit for the warp speed, speaking highly of the vaccine so much to the point where in his own rallies being booed about it. And so, regardless of the history, or no, regardless of how some of us will remember some of these nuances and details of this in the now, a lot of that is not gonna matter long term, especially when we start seeing what we're about to start seeing in the next um few years. And so it's very upsetting. It's very upsetting and unfortunate that it's been allowed to go this far. And when I say that it's just beginning, now there are possibly is going to be evidence coming out, or already is, and some studies being made that cancer is rising. Now in the hospitals, you still have a high level of people um, dealing with COVID. We don't know how much of that is just strictly COVID, or people dealing with reactions to what's possibly been happening to our immune systems over the last couple of years and some of these other things. But one of the most outlandish things that I've seen here recently, which is it's kind of hurtful for me to talk about, but this myocarditis, they're now trying to normalize it in children. And we're going to look at this here. We're going to look at the commercial that has recently come out from a hospital where this is just not something that you're going to do unless this is affecting a good number of the population. And before people go into the, oh, well, COVID can give you myocarditis, we're going to look at the actual numbers here. Okay. So let's take a look at this actual commercial that came out from, this is in, this is New York Presbyterian Hospital.
I've been into fashion since I can remember. But one day I had a stomachache so bad I didn't want to do anything. The team at New York Presbyterian said it was actually my heart. It was severely swollen, something called myocarditis. But doctors gave me medicines and used machines to control my heartbeat. It saved me. So now I can become the next great fashion designer.
So in this commercial, oops.
I've been with the Cliffside Block Volunteer Fire Department for.
So in this commercial, you have this young girl. I mean, this is a child talking about myocarditis. I do not remember. You guys let me know if you do, in past history where myocarditis has been talked about at such a rate before the vaccinations. Okay. And they try to talk about it in a very just casual way. We are literally and figuratively dealing with matters of the heart. Like, this is not a game. And so this casual coming from a hospital, you do not put out commercials unless something is significant enough to explore it, where it benefits the actual population and it benefits the services, or the services that the hospital is able to provide to the public. It's just not gonna happen. Okay. You see commercials about sinuses and diabetes and a lot of other things that generally affect a large percent of the population. And to put this out in a time where myocarditis is in fact rising in this particular demographic is in line with what some of us have already been saying and what we already know. Whether people want to realize it or not, this advertisement is specifically tailored towards parents that need to reconcile with the fact that you did this, you allowed this based on every number imaginable. There was very little risk for children in this demographic. People can tell you anything. People can just say a thing. People could just say anything. We've seen time and time again where even the news media has lies on top of lies and have not been held responsible. Now, a lot of times I assume that's because people just do not want to take the time to fight these things. It depends on the agency or the corporation that they may be going up against. They may not have the money, the resources, and the time and attention to dedicate to actually holding these people responsible. But there have been times where we've had to even recently see news personalities recant what they said. And so, and so to now see that this is being addressed in a different way is concerning. It's very concerning. And so let's take a look at So, first of all, let's talk about the mortality rates with children with myocarditis. The prognosis of myocarditis in children depends in part on the age of the patient. The mortality rate in newborn infants, and this is according to myocarditisfoundation.org. Like, this is the entirety of their organization. This is all they do. This is their wheelhouse, is study myocarditis. The mortality rate in newborn infants has been reported as high as 75%, while estimates in older children generally range from 10 to 30%. The mortality rate in older children ranges from 10 to 30%. If a child survives the early acute phase of the disease, their chances for long-term survival is very good. In addition, some patients may develop a chronic or recurrent form of myocarditis. Pediatric patients hospitalized with myocarditis have a remission rate of 15%. The mortality rate for children from myocarditis is 10% to 30%. This is according to the actual foundation, the organization that all they do is study this. The children that do not succumb to the mortality rate have a chance of a chronic or recurrent form of myocarditis, meaning that the children that do survive, right, now become a long-term patient of Big Pharma. So now not only did Big Pharma cause this problem, but now these children that will suffer from this for the rest of their lives will be reoccurring patients whose parents hard earned money, or the money that is still their hard earned money that is coming from these insurance companies, will go into paying the doctor bills of these children for possibly the term of their life. This is an unfortunate truth, and this is purely based off statistics. This is not me trying to ignore this based on what some news personality said. This is not me trying to undermine or, overstate what's happening here. This is coming directly from the organization that only studies this based on the statistics of this. Now, so if 10 to 30% of children who have myocarditis, it could be fatal, right? Then the real question needs to be, did I have oh no, let's look at this first. So before we look at that, the CDC already came out themselves and said that an elevated risk for myocarditis among mRNA COVID-19 vaccines has been observed, particularly in males aged 12 to 29 years old. This is the CDC. They're not ignoring it. They're not hiding it from you. They're not lying to you about it. If you go directly to the source, okay, they're telling you exactly what it is. An elevated risk for myocarditis among people that have had the vaccines, particularly in males aged 12 to 29. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices concluded that the benefits of COVID-19 vaccination to individual persons at the population level clearly outweighed the risk of myocarditis after vaccination. What are the implications for public health practice? Continued use of mRNA COVID-19 vaccines in all recommended age groups will prevent morbidity and mortality from COVID-19 that far exceed the number of cases of myocarditis expected. So even as they're saying this, right, it exceeds the number of cases expected. The continued use of the COVID-19 vaccines in all recommended ages will prevent the mortality from COVID-19 that far exceed the number of cases of myocarditis expected. But the part about this is that you may exceed the number of people getting COVID. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. So let me rephrase. When you look at the number of children that have actually died or the mortality rate of COVID, it is much less than myocarditis. So therefore, the people that have been vaccinated have a bigger chance of getting myocarditis, and myocarditis has a bigger chance of mortality. So this is according to unicef.org. Among the 4.4 million deaths reported, the MPIDR coverage database, 0.4% occurred in children and adolescents under the age of 20. 0.4%. So as a parent, right? It's crazy to me that people will get so upset if you say do your own research, as if the research is actually just something mind-boggling and super, you know, you need some type of science degree to do and make a decision for your family. That's an absurd assertion that even the fact that that is being said is complete propaganda, because it almost, I mean, it's telling you, quite frankly, you're not smart enough to think for yourself. You're not smart enough to go read the actual data, the research, and the numbers that they're publishing. They're publishing them for the public. That's what they're doing it for you to have access and go read it. It's not in some database where only scientists have access to it. It's literally there for the public. It's public information. And so to even try to discourage people out of that was completely absurd. And, I've talked about this even recently, relating it to the public school system, because so much of that is the teacher gives you the answer, or this is the answer, or this is the solution that I want you to come to. It's a very much like, over the years, as it relates to like critical thinking and some of these other teachings that could really help develop the minds and the skill sets and the thinking patterns of young children to teenagers to young adults, has been taken away with, no, this is the answer, this is how you should feel about this, and things like that. And so the numbers are there. And so for parents, it would have really, or should have, came down to a decision of, do you think that your healthy child will have a bigger chance of, because there's going to be different health risks if you have a sick child. There's going to be different things that you may need to do to protect that child. And for the sake of this argument, we're now just going to talk about healthy children, okay? If you have a healthy child with no prior risk, of health issues, for you, this should have been a decision of, do I take this 0.4%, not even a half of 1% chance of my child dying from this flu, or do I inject something into their bodies that has no long-term data, as we have always done for vaccines? This is something that was rushed to market. This is something that the first half of it, the entire propaganda or the entire narrative was, this is a Trump vaccine. I don't think you had the current VP, before she was the VP, came on TV, national TV, and says, I don't think I would trust a Trump vaccine. These were her words, right? It was an entire narrative against it. And as soon as that kind of started switching out, and you had this new administration come in, I guess everybody was on board. And so something that was so polarizing, right? Rush to market, not long-term testing. Early on, there were problems possibly coming out or questionable things facing women's menstruation and also the possibility of getting pregnant. And so, with all these things known, weighing that now against the chance that if your child does get myocarditis, they have a 10 to 30% chance of dying. So the 0.4% versus injecting something into a child with no long-term health health tests. And myocarditis is just something that we see and know, and people are experiencing now. We still don't know what will happen at the 5-year mark. We still don't know what will happen at the 10-year mark. This is just the beginning. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And if that child does not suffer from the 10 to 30% mortality rate and do end up getting myocarditis, it is something that they will possibly deal with for the rest of their life and will be a long-term, lifelong big pharma patient. So now you've inadvertently made this healthy child a not so healthy child. And to even say that, the vaccine outweighs what we are seeing with the heart, even that is just based on what we've seen now. We still do not have the long-term studies to know enough of this information. And the worst part of this is that you can't undo it. You can't undo it. There is on record, even on the CDC site, that says these therapeutics can help with COVID if you catch it early on. So now, even then, that child that had that 0.4%, not even 1% of facing a mortality rate, if you catch it, if you catch this virus, early on, you use some of these therapeutics, then that even decreases the chances of them being affected when it was, in some ways, a minuscule number when we're looking at numbers. I don't want to undermine, death, because any family that's dealing with that is going to hurt, and no family wants to deal with the untimely death of their child. Not at all, right? But also keep in mind, we have people, unfortunately, that literally die every year from the flu. There are people that die from pneumonia and upper respiratory infections during flu season. So unfortunately, it's not unheard of. And so when you are dealing with these things, you're going to have some of the population that is going to be susceptible to that. A smart person is going to look and go, what demographic do I fall in, and how much is my demographic susceptible to this, before I take on a possibly higher risk. And so I do feel concern and empathy for people that felt like they had to do this to send their child back to school, or Well, I think that would have been the most important reason, and people felt pushed into it or forced into it. And you probably had some people that thought that they were doing the best for their child, and now are having to deal with this. And you got to understand, these numbers are still pretty fresh and new, because they're seeing it's a risk now, but some of these things can show up years later. And one thing, man, one thing I really believe in is like, if we are not a society that protects children, then what type of society is that to speak of? It's very hurtful that you have children that will be affected and scarred and damaged by the sins of the adults around them. The people that would actually listen to people that say, don't think for yourself. You're not smart enough to do your own research. Just think about that for a second. That is so mind blown. When there are literally scientific articles that are released to the public so the public can have the information. It's not some top secret documents that commoners don't have access to. Like, let's be for real here. And that is what medicine is supposed to be and should be. We should have the information before we go making permanent decisions about our bodies. That's just should be common sense, science, medicine 101. That's why you'll have these commercials where they'll say X, Y, and Z will help you overcome this, but it may give you bloating and AIDS and da 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 diarrhea. Like, but the whole beginning of the commercial, the girl dancing and she happy and, jumping off mountains and whatever, running cross country, super happy. But then you get that serious voice at the end where it's like, now we still gonna tell you about these side effects because we got to do that part. That's part of it, because you need to know before you take this product. You need to know what you're getting into, and if you and your doctor make this decision, we did our part. We told you what we needed to tell you. No, Racer X. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the $20 super chat. Said, for children 0 to 9 down with the virus in the U.S., it is my understanding that all of them had serious medical conditions. So it is difficult to know if the virus was truly the cause of the death. That's a good point, and I talked about that. I think like several weeks ago, where even to this day, we do not know the number of people that died with COVID versus people that died from COVID. Like, we still don't have this information. I don't know if we'll ever have this information, but many people have alluded to the fact that they think the numbers are skewed. So, I guess if Joe Biden says be over it and RhondaMary move on, I guess that's what you're supposed to do, right? But unfortunately for me, I've never, I don't think in my lifetime, seen such crimes against humanity. The lies, the manipulation, the profit motive for the elite. I just, and to the point where it is affecting children, innocent children, the people we are supposed to protect. And a lot of ways we have failed to do that. The fact that so many schools have been emboldened to be like, you have to have this to come back to our schools, right? I think DC is possibly 25%, if not more, of Black students, particularly, that did not get this vaccine. And the DC schools are basically saying, don't come back. People will talk about every disparity in the world. But then when you mention this, they go Ray Charles. Now all of a sudden, disparities and marginalization don't matter. It's like, to me, just make it make sense, make it add up. If you are seeing the demographic that this is affecting the most, and you do not want to talk about that, you want to avoid talking about that or making it something different, I see that as problematic. And so to know that you're going to have innocent children that have had to deal with this, not because of nature, not because of something that they just happened to get. This was injected to them by force or coercion. You had so many children that did not have a choice that will now be affected by this. It's very different to deal with something as a consequence of nature versus a consequence of your direct actions and decisions. And so I think that over the next few years, we're going to start to see a lot more commercials and big pharma coming in to clean up the problem that they've caused. It's this kind of running joke where people will say how doctors will give you a medication for one thing, and then the next thing you know, you have 5 more problems, right? I think that this is going to be an example of that we're going to see over the next few years. And the craziest part about it is that the people that want to be blind to it and now want to move on and now feel like, oh, well, that's behind us, after the drama, the hurt, the pain, the illness that they've caused, the bad decisions that they've made, and all the other things that have been affected so many people, will try to just move on with their lives. And I don't think that we should let them. I don't think they should be able to get off this easy. These are literal crimes against humanity. The levels of coercion that we saw now almost feels like a dream. Like, it was so over the top. The bullying, the coercion, the name calling. I went to read Robert F. Kennedy's Wikipedia page today because Bill Gates mentioned him in that video. And in the very first sentence or two of this man's biography, they call him a conspiracy theorist and talk about unfounded claims as it related to COVID. Everything this man has ever done and accomplished, and you just throw that word out there to smear and stain him, regardless of the fact that we have so much data to prove that at the very least, there is reason for concern. Regardless of which way you sway, regardless of, your overall pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, whatever. If you as a person do not think that there is just at least a little bit of reason for concern, so much so that you must go on to smear people when there is so much data on the CDC's own website that suggests so, there's no fixing that. I'm not sure there's any coming back from that. And so if you are one of those people that keep your eyes open, over the next couple years, they're gonna subliminally start coming out with more of the truth. They're gonna tell us directly, but they're not gonna beat us over the head with it. It's not gonna be like how the COVID campaign was. It's not gonna be like that. It's gonna be for the people that want to face the truth and face the truth. The fact that Bill Gates is on record, he is on a national platform saying that Donald Trump had questions about the vaccines and finding out more about, the problems with them, and Bill Gates basically telling him, "Oh, did that. Don't even worry about that. Don't even look into that." That alone, knowing that there's profit motive for him, that alone should not only be a light bulb for people, but to me, that should be enough to get some investigations going. Now, will that happen? I don't know. These are very rich people. They can disappear you. They can, at the very least, which is really not less, but smear you, try to end and threaten your career, your credibility. Very powerful people. And so Mr. X said they smeared Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Robert Malone. Magic Moon said the Fox investigating themselves. It makes me think about when you will have police agencies that we possibly see wrongdoing there. You'll have police agencies, we'll see possible wrongdoing there, or at the very least something deserving of an investigation, and they'll investigate themselves. Well, that's convincing. like let's be real here. What interest do you have in finding yourself guilty, holding yourself responsible, especially when $1 billion on the table? Like, let's just keep it real. When billions of dollars on the table, what real interest do you have in holding yourself accountable? So, but I just think it's funny now that Biden has said this. This is the signal. This is the signal that now at least going into midterms, COVID, oh, we've moved on from that. We did great. We worked it out. We brought America back from this. We fixed it. My administration came in and we did this great thing. So, but anyway, if you are not subscribed to my YouTube, make sure you hit that subscription button below. If you're watching on Instagram, make sure you come over to YouTube and subscribe. Also, you can follow me on Twitter, talking noise all throughout the week, RhondaMary Vids. You can also find me on Instagram, Rhonda_Mary and Rhonda RhondaMary vids. I don't know what I said for Twitter. I am RhondaMary. It's some version of RhondaMary, because y'all know they be trying to censor your girl and whatnot, but it is what it is. Thank you to everybody that super chatted. Thank you for everybody that rocks with me. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscription button, and we will be talking soon. I think I said thank you to everybody that super chatted. I don't know. I just got a lot of thoughts going on in my mind right now. But if I didn't say that, thank you for the super chats. All right, y'all. Have a good night. Bye. Bye.